Happy fall equinox. As I am recording this, today is the fall equinox. It is the first day of my favorite season and I am just really excited about it. I don't know if you can see some of my bat decorations in the background. I feel like every year I embrace decorating a little bit more and it just brings me a lot of joy. I don't like any of the really scary stuff around Halloween, but I just love fall and I love Halloween and I love dressing up, and I feel like there's just such a playfulness to it. And I think it's important that we allow ourselves to do that still, even as adults, if that's something that we enjoy doing. I'm also sitting here with one of my favorite crystals, two of them actually, and they are perfect for this season as well. One is my black tourmaline, and I have had this particular one for many years now, and it is one of my favorites. It is a soft crystal, so you do have to be a little careful with it, but it's really good for protection, especially protecting your own energy from the people around you, which is important sometimes because we can get really influenced by others and then not know why we're feeling funky. So that's really good for that. And then I also have pyrite, which I love. It's definitely one of the money crystals. That leads me into what I want to talk about today. But first, I want to mention my name is Amy. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. I'm really happy to have you, and I'm really excited to have this space where we can talk about these topics, because I did get my degree in finance and I did that wanting to help people with money, and that was something that wasn't taught to me growing up. So I've had to work really hard to learn any kind of financial literacy. And when I graduated, I realized it was actually going to be a lot harder to help people the way I actually wanted to if it wasn't in some kind of sales role. And I didn't want it to be just about numbers and sales. Plus, I'm not a salesperson. I have since just been on this kind of quest of learning about life. And also it's really connected me spiritually, and not what I've done career-wise, but just my experiences over the last 20 years or so. And that's why I talk about these topics on here as money, but also, I talk about money, which is a very human side of us, but I also talk a lot about our mindset and what's going on internally, because I believe we are spiritual beings having this human experience, and both aspects of that are important. That's why I talk about these different topics. And today I'm actually going to talk about money and intuition, because I feel like this is such a huge part of our foundation for how these things actually go. But I don't think we realize that if we're not aware of it. And that's the biggest key, is just first becoming aware. For me, I was totally clueless about, anything to do with money or even my intuition. And as much as I kind of had this idea that I was raised a certain way, that was going to be my life, these were my circumstances, there was another part of me that came from inside that told me that didn't have to be it. That was my intuition. It took me a long time to be able to connect to that in a deep enough way where I could actually allow it to guide me, but I have been able to do that. And so now it's very much this balance of the two, of having these very human experiences, but also tuning into my highest self so that I can be in the highest alignment that's possible for me. I feel like we're born into situations and circumstances, and whether you have a lot of money or not, it's what is our relationship to it? What did we learn? What did we see? And we pick that up even when we're not conscious of it. So a lot of what we believe and how we approach it is based on what we've seen, but we don't realize that sometimes it doesn't have to be that way if it's not feeling good or serving us. And the ability to shift that has come from actually looking inward rather than outward so much. And that's where so much of our conditioning first comes from, is what's going on outside of us. I think many of us, we pick up these ideas and these beliefs and they feel very accurate. They feel very truthful and fixed, but a lot of times they don't actually have to be fixed. I think that it is extremely important to take input and learn from people around us who know more than we know about a topic. But ultimately, I think what matters after that is when it's time to actually make a decision, you are going inward and recognizing what your intuition is actually telling you once you have that information. An example I have for myself that's been a huge learning opportunity for me on these topics is many years ago, I had the opportunity to get involved in this kind of program, and it was extremely expensive, like the most expensive thing I've ever done. And I was unsure if I should do it or not because my head and my gut were telling me two different things. And I took advice from people around me who were not doing with their money what I was striving for. You know, I wasn't inspired by their money habits, yet I took their advice anyway, and I did it. And it was like the most expensive lesson of my life. And I very quickly realized what I did wrong with that. And ultimately, I listened to the people outside of me rather than tuning into the part inside of me that was very clear on what my steps should have been around that. And the only regrets I've ever had are when I listen and take advice from the people, places, things around me rather than trusting my instincts. And that is our intuition. But I think a lot of us feel that it is stronger for some people than it is for others, or easier to access or something. And while that might be true a little bit, that's only true because some people are more tuned into it, but everybody is as capable as tuning into it as the next person. And that is where we have to start to become conscious and aware of what are some of our conditionings, what do we believe, who are we looking to get all of our advice from? Are we constantly dependent on these things outside of us that are actually not serving us? Is it because we're too scared to actually consider other things? And it's very much about learning how to connect more and more to your intuition and removing these blocks that are keeping you disconnected from it. For me, those were limited beliefs. Those were ideas I had picked up from other people. These ideas of people who have money and then people who don't, people who can do this and people who can't. And taking input from others, from just not listening to me, to myself, and also feeling not worthy enough at times, feeling like, yes, I hear this part of me, but I don't know enough. But the thing is that that part of us is our highest selves. There is so much more wisdom in that. It's our minds that are separate from that actually think that that's where our lack of worthiness actually lives. The more you're able to actually connect to your intuition, the more you are going to start to feel connected to yourself, trusting the process, feeling satisfied with decisions that you're making because they will start to be very consistent for you. You will be really proud of the decisions you're making because the constant is that internal part of you. It's not going to be different aspects of different people around you trying to make up then what's right for you, because that's never going to feel totally right for you. It's never going to feel great. Connecting to our intuition is very much about being willing to consider other truths, other possibilities. Okay, I feel this. I'm in this situation. This is coming up right now for me. Something about it doesn't feel right though. And actually going into that and exploring it. What if it doesn't have to be the truth? Where do you remember first learning it from? Recognizing what another alternative could be for you. And through this, you'll really start to grow your intuitive muscle, your connection to your intuition. And even if it feels a little too risky to do that for something really big, starting with something really small, just seeing throughout your day these moments when you're able to quiet your head enough to connect to that and say, okay, I'm going to listen to it this time, and then see what comes from that. A lot of the reason we don't do that at first is because it feels really scary. We have no idea what the next step is. We only hear this first message. And if you keep following that though, more is always going to be revealed. You will always find out what that next step is. It will unfold after you take that first one. And if it still isn't clear yet, that means not to do anything. Don't take action if you are still unsure about what it is. Don't ask other people what they would do and then take the action if you still are not getting any kind of intuitive insight on what is best for you. And another thing that has been extremely helpful for me on being able to kind of sift through what is my intuition and what is other people's opinions is always sleeping on making a decision. And that has been so hard for me because I want to do things right away when I get the excitement, when I get the idea. And when I have been able to sleep on decisions that feel very hard to sleep on, I end up having the best results I could have by putting in that time and waiting and kind of clearing away so I can wake up with only my energy and so much more clarity on what I need to do. I think that especially for women, our intuitions are so strong, but we question it and we are not serving ourselves by doing that. And we don't need to always listen to the people around us or men to tell us what to do. You know what that feels like when it comes to the people you love, your children, your friends, things like that. Yet we are so quick to not trust it when it comes to ourselves and decisions like that. I am all for, and I think it is so important, we need to always be a student. We need to always be open to learning more and being curious and knowing that even if what is serving us in this moment, that can continue to evolve. And just allowing ourselves to consider other alternatives, other truths. Because just because it might be working for somebody else doesn't mean that's what's going to work for us. We need to constantly be strengthening our connection to our intuition because it always, always steers us in the right direction. And if you aren't sure of that, start thinking about moments in the past where maybe things you regretted. What was your gut telling you? Maybe moments where you maybe made a different decision than you normally would, and perhaps that was you actually listening to your intuition and things unfolded in a way that felt amazing to you. And that's also how you know is when you start making those decisions that are coming from your intuition, you're going to feel like you're in the flow. You're going to feel like things are happening without you having to do much work or effort. That is because that is that higher part of you helping guide you. It is so much wiser than our minds are. And that's the difference. We need to be able to differentiate between our mind and our intuition. So many of us are being run on our minds. That is where our ego is. And so even though it is trying to help us, that is ultimately not what's going to lead us to our best outcomes. I would love to hear any of your thoughts, where you are seeing this come up in your life, just anything you might want to say in the comments. Please consider subscribing, give me a thumbs up, and I will talk to you next time.